Our next step in solving equations is to solve equations that involve two different properties. We're going to be looking at multiplication and division today. They're going to be solved the same way as the addition and subtraction equations, and by that I mean we're going to do the opposite operation to find the correct answer. So if I look at this equation, I have negative 3 times x is equal to 45. So what I want to do is the opposite operation on both sides of this equal sign. And since it's negative 3 times x, I know that the opposite of multiplying is going to be division. So what I want to do now is divide both sides by this negative 3. So I'm going to put a fraction bar underneath this to show that I'm doing division. And negative 3 divided by negative 3 is going to be 0, which is just going to leave me with my x now. And since I did this by negative 3, I have to divide this by negative 3. And now I can get out a piece of paper because mental math may not help me with this. Maybe it will for some of you. 45 divided by negative 3, I will end up with a negative 15. And now I know I was able to find what the value of this variable is by doing the opposite operation. I divided both sides by negative 3, and it tells me x is equal to negative 15. I can go back and check my work. Negative 3 times a negative 15 gives me a positive 45, because if you remember, a negative times a negative is always going to be a positive. This next equation is also an equation that involves multiplication, but in order to find a solution for this, I'm going to have to rewrite it, because I see I have a negative x, and then I'm saying it's equal to negative 8. Well, if we think back to previous lessons, we know that a variable by itself is the same as saying 1 times the variable. So if I see a negative x, it's the same as putting negative 1 times x. So in order to get this started, I have to rewrite it. So I'm going to rewrite it the same way we just said. Negative 1 times x equals negative 8. Now the equation looks a little bit more familiar, kind of like the one we just did. So now I have negative 1 times x equals negative 8. Remember, the operation here is multiplication, so I need to do the opposite of that. So what I'm going to end up doing now is dividing both sides by negative 1. Divide by negative 1 here. These two numbers now cancel themselves because 1 goes into 1 once. Leaves us with the x. And now a negative 8 divided by negative 1 is going to give me a positive 8. Because if we think back to previous lessons, we know that a negative times a negative is a positive, a negative divided by a negative is also a positive. So x is equal to 8. If I go back and check that, negative 1 times 8 would equal negative 8. So I know we did this one correctly. The last equation we'll be looking at today involves division. So if I have an x divided by 2, because that's what this fraction bar means, it means x divided by 2. And we're being told it's equal to 0.75 or 75 hundredths. So remember, to solve this equation, I always do the opposite operation. So if I have an x divided by 2, that means I'm going to have to now multiply both sides by 2. So if I come over here and multiply this by 2, we already know by now that the 2's are going to cancel each other out, which will just leave us with x. And that's going to be equal to 0.75, and I want to multiply that by 2. Now to make it easier on you, you can put your 2 down here. Remember, you're going to have to move the decimal 2 places out of the way and put it back 2 places in our answer. 75 hundredths times 2, I end up with an answer of 1.5. Now I can go back and check my work too and do this problem. I can take 1.5 divided by 2, and I will end up with an answer of 75 hundredths.